We have, thanks for starting that, Aliana. I just want to acknowledge we have a very difficult time right now in the world, and just want to send our, our love, our prayers to the people in Israel and Palestine. So as we start, I want to share a little bit about what BII is, who we are. So we are an impact investment fund that's working to build financial, social, and political power for entrepreneurs of color to help close the racial wealth divide. As an impact investor, we're focused on supporting the people, places, and enterprises that are building our shared future and a more just and equitable economy. We manage two funds, what we call integrated capital funds, and you're going to learn a little bit more about what that is, that invest in entrepreneurs of color and also in community-owned and controlled real estate. And over the past 10 years, we've invested over $14 million into over 80 companies that we provide impact-focused business support, connections, and coaching to over 100 businesses per year. We are also dedicated to learning and teaching our field how to advance impact investing more broadly, which gets to the topic today. And so we provide education and training programs to investors, entrepreneurs, philanthropists, with the goal of advancing impact investing with a racial equity lens and a community-based focus. We train fund managers. Over the last 3 years, we've trained over 50 emerging fund managers, mostly women and people of color, to launch community-based funds in their place across the country. And these investors represent about 23 different funds that some have launched and some are about to launch. And through education and investing, we believe we're working to transform the way capital is allocated to build community wealth, power, and ownership. So that gets us to the topic today. We have launched this series of conversations around building community power and doing it with the lens of what social impact investing matters for you and means for you. I joined BII in 2021, and the reason I joined was because I was doing some investing. I was an angel investor over the last, I want to say 6-7 years. I was investing myself in individual companies, not a lot, with just small amounts to help seed women-owned and people of color-owned businesses. And I always wondered, how can we do more to accelerate the pace of businesses that are also doing good, that are thinking about how we impact the workplace or create a more equitable ecosystem for their communities, or how do we advance climate justice? And so coming to BII gave me a framing of how we can actually use our dollars to also change the world and address some of the inequities that many of our communities are facing. So with that, we wanted to provide a lens of both some of the companies that BII invests in and the great work that they're doing, and also how ordinary people can invest in solutions like this. So we also have a community investor lens that we're hoping to share with you. So with that, I'm going to invite my colleague, Regina Sarpong, who is our marketing manager, to kick us off.
Thank you, Betty. Hello, everyone. I'm saying hello. I cannot see your faces, but I'm sure there are lots of people here. And thank you for joining us for the first installment of our Community Investor Series, Building Our Shared Future, Why Impact Investing Matters. My name is Regina Sarpong, and I am the Marketing and Communications Manager here at Boston Impact Initiative, and your moderator for today. To start, I want to acknowledge that although Hispanic and Latino Heritage Month has recently ended, we recognize, support, and joyfully amplify the contributions and impact Latinos have had in our communities and on our economy. Today, we are joined by a full panel of Latino trailblazers in our community that I am honored to introduce. First, we have Abel Vargas. Abel serves as the president of Valley Home Installation, a firm catering primarily to Spanish-speaking households and enabling them to tap into the Mass Save state-sponsored weatherization program. Abel is a seasoned energy efficiency professional rooted deeply in community engagement and has devoted his career to advocating for underserved communities, particularly within the post-industrial regions of Massachusetts. So first, I want to say thank you for joining us, Abel. Next, we have Aliana Pineiro. Aliana serves as the Impact Director at Boston Impact Initiative. In her role, she works with BII's portfolio companies to effectively measure and manage their impact. Previous to BII, Aliana did work as a researcher at the Global Impact Investing Network, publishing practitioner-oriented research for impact investors around the world. She is interested in how impact investing can evolve to become more just, equitable, and inclusive. Thank you for joining us, Aliana. Next, we have Elena Letona. Elena is a community investor of Boston Impact Initiatives Fund 1 and 2. Born in El Salvador, Elena has 30 years of experience working and serving the nonprofit sector as a volunteer, organizer, activist, teacher, director, and consultant. Elena has directed 2 community organizations in Massachusetts, Centro Crescente, an immigrants' rights organization, and Neighbor to Neighbor, a membership organization of working class people of color and immigrants. Thank you for joining us, Elena. And last, but most certainly not least, we have Yamillet Payano. Yamillet serves as the CEO of SignSpeak, a technology company seeking to bridge the communication divide for the 48 million deaf and hard of hearing individuals in the United States. Before joining SignSpeak, Yami worked with the Federal National Mortgage Association, where she worked to reduce discrimination in the lending process for low-income marginalized minorities. As a first-generation Afro-Latina, Yami is deeply committed to empowering others and promoting inclusivity and equality in the business world. We are honored to have you all for this event and excited to hear all that you have to share today. So before we begin, some housekeeping. I just want to say to please make sure if you are not speaking, your microphones are muted. If you have a question at any point during the session, please feel free to drop them in the chat and we will revisit them during the Q&A portion at the end. You are also welcome to come off of mute and ask your questions out loud, which we highly encourage once the Q&A starts. We are recording this session and will share with all participants who RSVP. Okay, so let's jump right in, starting with Aliana. And in case you all were wondering, Aliana is my manager, and she's also the best. And no, I am not being paid to say that. All right, so
Thanks,
Aliana,
Regina.
first question for you. Question on everyone's minds. What is impact investing? What are the different types of impact investing? And how does BII show up in the impact investing arena?
Sure. So impact investing is making an investment with an intention to receive both a financial return, but also a social or an environmental return. So that is, just in a nutshell, very broad strokes what impact investing can be. That can be anything from, environmentally, like climate-focused investing. That can be investments into, education, investments into certain human services where you're expecting your money back, and maybe a small return, maybe a big return, but also you're looking to measure and manage for those social or environmental impacts. Now, not all impact investing is racial justice investing and focused on economic justice the way that BII is. BII was founded 10 years ago and has always been focused on how we can use capital and use these tools to close the racial wealth divide in Massachusetts. And now, we're investing across Massachusetts and in the Northeast. And I would say that, how BII shows up, the type of impact investing that we do, we call it impact first. So we're really focused on how we can help the entrepreneurs that we're investing in, how we can really generate impact through those investments, right? Because the entrepreneurs are the businesses are the ones generating the investments, and BII is sort of putting money towards those initiatives. And we're also thinking about it in a way that's not extractive. So we're not trying to get the best rates, right, back from our investments, because we don't believe in that level of extraction from the communities that we're working with. We also want to make sure that those companies are not extracting from the environment, but are actually regenerating and figuring out how we can help to protect the environment and work in a sustainable manner. And so all that to say is that our focus is on economic justice, climate resilience, and then the third one, and then I'll stop talking, Regina, but the third one is governance and power. So we're also looking at, how are organizations, how are they showing up to their communities, to their workers? Is there any kind of democratic governance within their model? Do people have the opportunity in the business to either own a piece of the business, or do they have the opportunity to contribute their creativity and ideas to making the business go? So we're looking at those three areas of impact as we think about investing.
Thank you, Aliana, for sharing that. I feel like that gave a really great overview. So that was a great way to start. So our next question is directed toward Yamillet and Abel. And the question is, how has impact investing shown up in your entrepreneurial journey? What has it been like to work with BII, and what else do you wish was out there? I'm also happy to reiterate the question based on whoever starts answering. No problem.
Why don't we start with Yami?
Sounds good. So for me, well, good afternoon, everybody. And thank you for joining. I think that for me, it has been very important to find investors that are aligned with me and my values, especially since Science Week is looking to empower a community that is very underserved, that is the deaf and hard of hearing community, and in a space like accessibility, which in my honest bias opinion is going to be the next big thing in inclusion in our generation. Now, if we're looking at, there's billions of people that have some sort of disability. So for me to be working in the space and to be working with BII, it helps because we're not so much being pushed to do things that are against our beliefs, right? So as a CEO, when I'm reporting to my stakeholders, it's really important to emphasize where we are. And sometimes when you're trying to do good, you kind of have to stop and look around you and say, okay, you need feedback from the community that you're serving, right? And that might mean that you have to move a little slower. So to have investors that understand that and value that, and it's not just about the profits and pushing you to do things that might actually harm a community rather than help, has been really, really critical to us. And in addition to that, having someone who's actually rooting for you, right? Having someone that it's like, I'm going to connect you to so-and-so. So working with BII has actually given us great customer, leads. It has led us to even other investors that align with us in the value. And as someone who grew up in the hood in New York City, right, and do not have that capital, having an investor that also allows me to connect with other people that aligned and into capital of spheres that are a little bit larger and would allow for more resources have really been impactful to me and to the company. And that's why we're here today, right? Talking to some of the largest companies in the world to be able to provide that product if equality to the deaf and hard of hearing community within AI technology that has really never been done. And if anybody would have told me that when I was 8 that I would have 2 patents in technology, I would tell you that I'm lying. So it has been truly a pleasure to accomplish all this alongside BII.
Good afternoon, folks. I'll try to follow up Yamillet. I'm not sure how well I'll do, but I'll do my best. The work that I do, I work as the president of a company called Valley Home Installation, and essentially what we do is we put stuff in people's walls, right? We insulate people's homes, and support them in trying to lower their energy burden as part of the Mass Save program. And my entrepreneurial journey and how BII has been so impactful. If I backtrack and kind of think about the experience of a person of color trying to navigate the professional world, and you graduate from college, right? And you're the hot shot in your family. So you're supposed to drive an expensive car, have this great job, and all these other things, and you go and you do that, right? And that pressure makes it so that you're beholden to this job that pays you 70, 80, $90,000 an hour. And as you're navigating through the world, working to pay for stuff, our dreams and our hopes and our ambitions are kind of squandered down so that we're not able to pursue these opportunities. So having someone or an organization like BII that allows you to dream beyond your next paycheck really makes it so that we could have impact in communities where we live, where we grew up, and leverage our lived experience so that we could have the maximum impact. Otherwise, other folks, other companies, other organizations are doing that, and oftentimes the experience of the consumer that we're trying to serve and deliver a quality product to doesn't happen because it happens with a lens that's kind of skewed by their own lived experiences that oftentimes don't reflect that of the community. So, the state has a goal to reduce carbon emissions by 2050. And there was an article a few years back in the Boston Globe, and it said the road to doing that is weatherizing triple deckers, because all these triple deckers were built in 1900 and 1910 and 1920. And if you're not intentional about who's doing this work and how focused they are on doing that work, you're going to miss out on a lot of impact and delivering services to people in that community. So my goal and my impact is, and through the support of BII, is to make sure that La Doñita or the El Don that lives on whatever street in Lawrence or Roxbury and Dorchester is able to access these benefits that have always been available, but for way too long, people from our communities haven't been able to leverage.
Abel, thank you so much for that. I want you all to know when we got on a call before, just the panelists and myself, Abel brought up the Cash for Gold spot. And as a true person that also came from the hood, I felt very connected to that. And I feel like a lot of people that live in communities and neighborhoods like that, they understand the Cash for Gold spot. So I love what you said today, even what you said then about like having that connection to your community in ways where you'll just say something and people can identify with that. I feel like that is so very important. Thank you, Abel. Okay, our next question is for Elena. And the question is, what brought you to BII as an investor? So you're on the other side of the spectrum, being an investor. And how does investing in BII's fund align with your values?
Hello, everybody. Elena Letona here. And I've got to start by telling you all that even the title investor, for me, is like, what the hell is that? Why? Because I have dedicated so much of my life to the work of justice. And, the work has been like, bringing down capitalism, bringing down systems of oppression, and the idea, right, that I would be an investor just really didn't jive until I found myself somewhere in my 50s. And hey, the end of private property is not here, right? Like capitalism is still very much alive. And I find myself with absolutely no security. For those of you on the call that have done the work of justice, you all know very well that we choose this work not to get rich. So what did I do? I approached Deborah Fries, who founded BII and who is a very good friend of mine. And I said, I need some advice. And that is when she shared with me the intent of BII, the first fund. Okay, so this was a few years back. And I was sold on it for the reasons that you already heard. You already heard from Aliana that BII invests in amazing enterprises like the ones that are being led by Yamillet and Abel. You already heard them. I mean, these are amazing enterprises that are being led by folks of color, by women, that are providing services by and large unmet, right? Like providing energy efficiency to low-income communities, people of color communities, that not only help them with the cost of the energy, right? But it also helps us all in our fight against climate disaster, okay? We all want to reduce those carbon emissions. And then you heard from Yamillet. I mean, like the innovation to think about how we can apply the latest in technology to serve an underserved population like the hard of hearing. So when I hear about those stories, and I know that my investment is going to support such enterprises, it makes my heart glad. The other thing that was mentioned by Aliana is that these enterprises are looking for ways to integrate their workers into the governance of their businesses. These are enterprises that are not exploiting workers and they are not exploiting the environment. Things are very, very important to me. Two more things. Aliana also mentioned that this is not about the kind of huge returns, which I was not interested in, because to get those huge returns, you know that some pretty bad extraction is going on of workers and the environment, okay? But here's the nice thing, that the return is better than your savings account, which is what I had. So I took a plunge. I took this like risk with the first fund, and I invested not a lot of money, because you don't need a lot of money to be a community investor. And I got what was promised back 3 years later, because the last thing that BII does is pay so much attention to the question of justice at all levels, that there are different ways to be an investor. And these guys at BII, they put the pyramid, upside down, whereby investors with deeper pockets take care of community investors like me. So if something may go wrong, and I don't think anything has ever gone wrong with BII, but in the event, my investment is more secure than the investment of those that have deeper pockets. So I love that about BII, that it is totally justice-oriented, and it helps people like me that have not had the kind of orientation, the kind of long-term planning, to take care of myself, as I look at retirement, that they care about people like me to provide something good, something that has justice at every single level.
Thank you, Elena. So powerful. I know we joked about this the last time, but Elena swore that she would not be as wonderful on Zoom as she is in person. And every time I hear you speak, I am inspired. And again, I promise we are not paying anyone to say any of these things. This is the work. Okay. Thank you so much, Elena. That was amazing. So our next question is back to Yamillet. And the question is, what is it like to raise investment capital as an underrepresented entrepreneur? I know I see your face already.
The trigger warning. No. It's definitely hard. Primarily because there's no winning. And something that I've learned about pitching and fundraising is that you really need to, understand that you're really not changing someone's opinion about you and your business. You're just trying to find the people that vibe with you and vibe with what you're creating, right? So at the beginning, what ends up happening is that at the top of investment firms and top tier investment firms are led by predominantly white males, right? And their way of viewing the world, it's through their own lens, right? So a question that I got often is, well, I don't know anyone who's deaf and hard of hearing, right? And I ask, well, that's because of your sphere of influence, right? It's like saying, well, I don't know a Black or a Latino person. Well, of course, if you only hang around with with your comfort zone, that's what you're going to experience. So for me, it was particularly difficult. Once, because I don't look like them. I don't have similar experiences as them. Two, I am talking about a population that not a lot of people is exposed to. I mean, we're starting to see that with CODA and some other heavy movements where people are like, sign language, it's its own grammatical structure. It's its own language like Spanish or any other language, right? And what SignSpeak is doing is creating an AI that through any camera, any device can translate that into voice and then take voice back into sign language through an avatar, right? So that one day I can sign in Zoom and you guys can understand me. And this is something will give a level of access that has never been seen before. And even though that is technically challenging and it has not been done before, I faced a lot of pushback on how big is this population? Well, how many people really use sign language, right? And we started getting into minimizing the problems, even though there are millions of people around the world, not just in America. Think about Latin America. They have deaf people too, with even lesser access. Think about Africa and even lesser access. So we're looking about a technology that can impact millions of lives and allow them to participate in the workforce, allow them to go and actually go to their doctors and get the access that they need and the information that they need from their providers, right? In a way that they haven't done before, but because they were so focused on, I don't know anyone who's deaf or hard of hearing. I don't know, this seems like a small problem. No one wanted to invest in us, right? And that felt, as a founder, it felt really demoralizing because you go into the world with this big idea and everybody's telling you it's not as big as you think it is. You need to have a lot of resolve in yourself and a lot of self-awareness to say, no, they just don't understand what I'm trying to do in the world, right? So it's been hard. And then I found this term called social impact investors, which I didn't know anything about, right? I only knew about your typical financial investors. So I started looking into social impact funds, how they worked, sort of their thesis. And that's where I found BII. And honestly, everybody in my cap table is a social impact investor or is an individual angel who really vibes with the problem. So with that, right, I had other competitors who are literally like, Yami, how do you feel about your investors? And I'm like, they're my, Zach and the team at BII and Henry are some of the people that I call when I have a strategy problem. And I don't feel the need to, I don't need the need to be someone that I'm not, because they understand the problem, they understand where I come from, they understand the community that I'm trying to solve, and that really makes it easy, rather than trying to convince someone, oh, this is why you need to invest. It's tiring. It is very tiring. So it has not been easy. You guys all know the numbers, so I'm not gonna say, well, the numbers that go to Black women in particular, but it's not easy. So it's very good. And this is what I particularly have realized. When we all go and do our own thing, there's nothing more than to leave a legacy. And to Elena's point, right? My company is going to give returns. So I'm not asking anyone to do me a favor, right? It's a technology that is literally coveted right now by some of the top companies so that they can be the first in the market with it. We're talking about controlling home devices with sign language, right? So I'm not doing anyone a favor, but at the same time, yes, we want to give back to the deaf and hard of hearing community. We want to invest in those people, those jobs, those trainings. So the return might be a little smaller, but that impact compensation that now we have a whole community that gets to go feed their families, get to add more to society, be taxpayer. I mean, the impact is even greater. So for me, well, it has been hard. I welcome that it was challenging, because if not, I wouldn't have found social impact investor term, and I would have kept trying to fit in something that I didn't really fit in. So it was hard and challenging, but it taught me the greatest lesson of my life, which is find people that are already predisposed to be and to cheer you on rather than becoming something that you're not.
Yamillet, I kept on reacting and zoomed the little hand clap because I wanted to do it in real life. Just thank you for speaking to really like the differences between impact investing and traditional investing, like what it means to be an investor. And Elena even got to speak to that. So that really touched. I like wanted to clap in real life. So now I'm going to do it now that I'm off mute. Okay, so our next question is going back to Abel. According to HispanicStar.org, 1 out of 5 entrepreneurs in the US are Latino. And according to the US Small Business Administration, as of 2019, Hispanics and Latinos own more than 4.5 million businesses and employ over 2.9 million people. Abel, as a Latino business owner yourself, why is it important to support local Latino-owned businesses?
I'll start the answer by noting some of the conversations that I've been in when referring to access and DEI initiatives, and oftentimes I hear that, you know, we need a bigger slice of the existing pie. We need to be in more seats, we need to be in more positions, we need, you know, all of these things. And my response to that is, you know, I don't want to be in someone else's table. I want to be my own, right? I want to be at my own dinner table. At my dinner table, we eat plátano, rice and beans. You know, this is what we eat here. And if you don't want to eat that food, that's fine. You go to the other table and do that. And being empowered to be able to do that and say those things, like this is what we do here, and you can do what else you do somewhere else, allows us to not just leverage state contracts and contracts with utilities and all of that to create wealth for myself, but also allows me to expand that impact to others. So for example, the Mass Save program and the Lean program, they allow folks to replace boilers and to remediate asbestos and things like that. So I have a choice. I can go out into the open market and just put out bids for the work that needs to be done, or I could stay in my community. So I make sure that the plumbers that work for us, they're all from Lawrence. The remediation companies that remediate asbestos and mold, vermiculite, they're all from Lawrence. My electricians are all from Lawrence. And I think the problem that we have, that there's a litmus test on what's capacity, what makes you smart, and oftentimes, or what makes you capable of doing stuff. And oftentimes language is the litmus test to whether or not you're smart or capable. When I used to work for Mass Hire in workforce development, and you know, people would say, well, we need people to speak English so that they could work here. And my response was like, well, maybe you have to change your processes so that you could get more out of your workforce and they could be more productive in the spaces that you want them to be productive. So I'm taking that so when someone comes and they want to work for me, or they want to add value or what have you, we make it so that it is done in a language that they feel comfortable in. And they don't have to pretend something that they're not to add value to the work that we're doing. So you mentioned earlier like the cash for gold spot thing, right? And the reference is that when we're trying to impact communities of color to leverage these programs to meet these state goals, I understand how it might be for someone that's not from the community to be in a place like Chelsea or Lynn or what have you, late night doing all of this work. But when you're familiar with the spaces that you're in, and the Cash for Gold spot and the bodega and the barber shop, and you walk into these spaces and it feels familiar, it feels like I belong here. Whether you're in Lawrence, Chelsea, wherever, you belong there. And it makes it so that if the goal really is to engage and connect people from those communities to these programs, it's much easier when it's natural versus programmatic and or forced upon. So if I'm a contractor from, I don't know, Swampscott, and the utility company say, we want you to do this in this community, that's going to be hard for me because I have to figure out how to engage with these people. So for us, it's easy because I just go. And I always tell the guys and some of the folks that work for me is, if you're in someone's home and you're with a doñita, and they offer you un cafecito, you drink it. You don't say no, you drink it, because the experience that people need to feel safe and feel like they should and can participate needs to reflect their lived experiences, not what some consultant put together in a slide deck that's really pretty says they need. They need people to relate to them. They need people to connect with them. And if you empower businesses like mine and others that understand that innately, not because they want some training or some conference or something like that, they just know it, the impact is so much greater, so much more natural, and you're able to have more impact in more people's lives, and build wealth, build jobs, and make people feel like they belong. The last thing I'll say is, there's this program called through the Mass Day or whatever, it's called low income, right? And it's marketed as the low income program, right? These are folks that receive subsidies for gas and electric. They may be on SNAP or Section 8 or what have you, but the program calls it low income and it's marketed that way. So in my company, we never say to someone on the phone, you're low income and we're going to help you. Why? Because it feels like, oh, I'm poor, so, what have you. So we say you're receiving assistance, or we say something like that, because I know how it feels to be looked down and say, oh, you're poor, so, we're just going to give you whatever you can get. So we try to make it so that the people that are receiving subsidies or receiving support or receiving help, just because it's free, doesn't mean it can't be dignified. So they could complain and they could argue and they could say, I don't want this, I want that. We allow people to feel safe, to advocate for themselves, rather than just, here, it's free. And I think that comes from our own lived experiences and reflecting those on the services that we provide.
Abel, thank you so much for that. You are so right. It's like you invest back into your community and your community invests back into you. Okay, so our next question is for Aliana. Back to my manager, who I said was the best, and I said I was not being paid to say. So Aliana, we have heard about BII. We've heard from some entrepreneurs. We've heard from some community investors. What are the opportunities for investing in BII's fund? I'm coming off the street. I love BII. I love what we do. How do I get involved investing in BII's fund? So that's the first part of the question. The second part is, how do we hope impact investing will evolve beyond where it is right now?
Sure. So I would say first things first, if you're interested in investing, Elena made a great plug for us, and thank you very much. But essentially, if you are a non-accredited investor, so you don't meet the wealth or income test for accreditation, and we can let you know what that is. But that you are able to invest as little as $1,000 into our fund, and up to $25,000 if you like. And it's a 5% note for 5 years. And if you renew it at the 5-year mark, it's 7% at renewal. And so this investment, what it is an investment into our fund. So we are asset managers. We take the investment and then we make the decisions and the investment choices and do all the investment management on our side on the fund. And then we, pay you a return as an investor. But I want to just touch on like why we did this, because most private funds, we're a private closed-end fund. They don't have this carve out and set aside for community investors or for non-accredited investors. They just work with accredited investors that have the wealth and the access to these types of opportunities. But as investors in our community, especially as place-based investors in our communities, we didn't want it to be a thing where people from outside of the community were investing in and then taking a return out only. Right? We wanted it to be a model where people from the community themselves, with a bit of, additional income. I recognize $1,000 is not something that, everybody has just hanging around in their pocket or in their bank account, ready to invest in BII. But those who do can invest and be part of this circular economy, essentially, of the circulation of wealth and money around our communities. So that's one piece that I just wanted to touch on. If you are interested in investing, this is the website, which I'll pop in the chat right now to learn more. And then you just get directly in touch with us. So you get in touch with myself or Betty. We can put our email addresses in the chat. Reach out to us. We will follow up with some information after this call, but reach out to us and we can follow up and have a more in-depth conversation. The other piece, which is really exciting for me, how do we hope impact investing will evolve? And I'm gonna sort of answer one of Abe's questions that you've put in the chat there, around how we're hoping to change impact investing and sort of what we're doing. So a $20 million fund in the Boston area isn't going to change the landscape of impact investing, right? It's a drop in the bucket. It's a great demonstration, but what we are going to change, we're changing what we're doing. We are changing things, right, for maybe 50 entrepreneurs, right? And certainly for Abel and Yami, they have felt what we've been able to do. However, across the country and the industry at large, what we're doing is we are kind of hoping that our message gets out and our models get out. And so we've been running these fund manager education for first-time fund managers of color, and women fund managers across the country. We have 1 or 2 on here at least. I saw Shaka and Marco on the call. But they are running funds in their own place. We cannot pretend to know the farming communities of upstate New York or the small businesses of Chattanooga, Tennessee. But there are people who do know those places really well and who are interested in deploying capital the way that we do. So making investments across the spectrum of investments, making equity, debt investments, and even some grants, right? Thinking about return in a different investment return in a different way. And so we're able to share our templates with them. We're able to show them how we're doing it, and kind of, a little bit get them on board, but also assist them as they launch their first funds. And so that's what we've been doing through our fund manager education program. And so that's, you'll never see BII in a different city on the West Coast or, in the South, but you will see organizations that have been through our same fund manager program that I've been describing. And we've worked with 50 fund managers to date, over 20 funds across the country. And we're really excited about what that might mean for how capital moves in the future.
Thank you, Aliana. Sorry, I got lost right there in my mute. I didn't know where it was, but I'm back. All right, so our last question is for Elena, and then we're going to open up a Q&A portion of this call so folks can ask their questions. You can come off mute and ask. We have one more question for Elena, and then we'll move into that. We'll transition. So Elena, last but not least, any words of advice of getting started in impact investing for folks who are interested? Aliana just explained, how people can get involved and like what it pertains. But like any words of advice from you, someone who has invested in both Fund 1 and Fund 2?
Yeah, so I want to first note that a lot of the questions on the chat group have more to do with, how do I get trained? How do I get started, the fund? And I really want to encourage every single one of you on this Zoom, every single one of you, to become a community investor, okay? It only takes $1,000, well, for me, $1,000 is a lot, but it takes $1,000. If you have $1,000 in a savings account, consider putting it with BII. If you have some money in Wall Street, whoa, take it out and put it in BII, okay? Become a community investor. I know that listening to Yamillet and Abel, I was so proud to know that my little investment is going to support beautiful entrepreneurs like Yamillet and Abel. Your story, Yamillet, about how challenging it's been to have these people imagine how important the latest advancement in technology are for the hard of hearing is, for me, it was heartbreaking, okay? So thank goodness for you. Thank God for you, right? And I love the fact that, Abel, you are bringing energy efficiency to homes in the hoods that I care about. For me, investing in BII, I say this from the bottom of my heart, is a win-win proposition. If you are on the other side of this equation, if you're an investor rather, if you care about economic justice, this is it. If you care about racial justice, this is it. If you care about the environment, this is it, okay? You will not be getting the huge bucks that Wall Street provides, but you don't want that anyway. Not if you care about justice, you don't want that anyway. So do it. I would love to see a show of hands of who's gonna walk away out of here and call Aliana right away and say, how can I be a community investor, okay? Thank you. Do it. Take the plunge.
I am loving the call to action. Like, who today is going to invest? That is beautiful and amazing. Yes, again, like Aliana said, if you have any questions, we have Zach in the chat. Many of y'all know Betty. We have Aliana here on the panel. We have others that can support. We have our website. We have our social media. You can connect with us in multiple ways. Thank you to all of our panelists. So before we transition to the Q&A portion of this session and before folks drop off, I want to thank you all for joining us and thank our panelists for sharing time and space with us today. This has been amazing. This is just the tip of the iceberg. We are going to do more community investor events so we can answer questions so folks can get a real deep understanding of the work that we do at BII. Ways to support our work, other funds that are doing similar work, our cohort. There have been lots of questions in the chat. So this is just the first installment of it, but there will be more to come. So I want to say thank you to you all for joining in case folks have to drop off, but we are going to do a few questions before 1:30. And if you drop the question in the chat, or if you have a question that is coming to mind, you can come off of mute or you can ask it in the chat. But the first question I'm going to start with, and I believe this is for Aliana and Elena, but anyone can jump in that may have an answer for this, that someone did ask in the chat, and I can name that person, but I want to ask the question first, is, are there ways to help cut the strings that are sometimes attached to investments and donations? Do you help investors question the idea of getting a return on investment from community work?
Right. Thanks for that question. I think it's a really good one. So, you know, we're set up like a fund. And so part of the, way that we express that is through this formal investment process, right? So we have notes that we sell to accredited and non-accredited investors. It's an agreement for us to repay them at a given time with a given interest, right? There is, in that capital stack, there's the community notes, then there's what we call solidarity notes. So those are 3% 10-year notes for accredited investors. And then there's 10-year 1% notes. And so part of the conversation that we've been having with some investors is, especially more philanthropic institutions, investors that are, considering kind of more philanthropic type of investments, is to fill out that bottom tranche of 10-year 1% notes. If they can kind of forego that interest on that amount of money, which, by the way, those are for larger investments into the fund for accredited investors, right? So between $10,000 and $3 million are the philanthropic notes. But so there is a bit of education around, like, how much return do you really need? We're also giving you an impact return. And so how much return do you really need on your investment? I think the other thing that we've been talking to investors, foundations, and others about is just, it's not just siloed, here's my grant giving money and here's my investment money. Like, there is a spectrum that bridges those. And there's, you can, if you consider, some of your grant giving money is to do good, and you want to move it into a 1% note that you'll get back, and also get impact and social and environmental impact return from that, like, you should consider that. And so just how we think about what is investment and what is philanthropy, I think we're challenging that piece. And then we do have our companies report to us on how they've been doing, and on their impact. And that is something that our investors like to see each year. And we would, it's a publicly available report. And that's something that we haven't foregone. So Abel and Yami still, annually have to fill out their annual impact assessment. But part of that is just so that we can all track what's important to us. So I'll stop there.
Alrighty. So I'm going through the chat, but if anyone has a question, please feel free to come off of mute and ask your question. One question that came up in the chat is, how different or similar is BII and Ujima Boston?
Yeah, I'll answer that question too. Boston Ujima Fund is our sister fund. We were started before them, but they were sort of modeled similarly to us as a charitable loan fund. The main difference between us and them is that they are also an alliance of businesses, the organization itself. So they've been organizing community to support local businesses, and those businesses can access the fund by the community voting on it. So we have a closed, investment committee, which is, if you're an investor, you can come and sit in on an investment committee meeting. You can meet the investment committee members. It's a very diverse group of people. Our board, who also votes on on investments is a very diverse group of people representing community. But Boston Ujima Fund is a fund that goes out to its members and says, should we make this investment? And their investment committee just gives suggestions and sort of reviews things to think about. But ultimately, the members decide. And actually, I'm a member of Boston Ujima Fund, and I vote on their investments. So I think it's a really great fund to also get involved with if you're local in Boston. But main difference is that we're sort of more of a representative of community on our board and governance structures, and they are going straight to community for the investment decisions. I'm looking in the chat. I know that there's a couple of other questions that might be worth following up with individually with some of these folks.
Question.
Yes.
Hi. I also understand you also work with BECMA. What is your relation with BECMA? And
Yes.
I also know that you have them in here, Innovation Studio.
Yes. So Marissa's here from the Innovation Studio. We share space with BECMA, and we're a close partner of BECMA's, and have hosted events together. We are housed in Roxbury Innovation Center, and so we share an office space with BECMA, and have partnered on a few different initiatives together, and always try to kind of, we speak at the Mass Black Expo. We have them come and speak at our events, and so it's a close relationship, and we've been working with them for quite a while. But yeah, that's it. It's a good and close relationship, I would say.
Good. In the Innovation Studio, what do you think? Because I was actually at the BECMA event, the Black Expo, and also the Innovation Studio was, part of that situation. I understand.
Yes. Oh, Innovation Studio. We're also close partners with Innovation Studio. We've run programs with them. Again, we rent space from them. And yes, again, partnered on a few different initiatives, kind of. So I think the thing, maybe I'll say more broadly, the great thing about the ecosystem of business support in Boston, is the last thing I'll say, is that we're all really supportive of each other. So we're always recommending to each other and working together. And that's been a really great thing about the ecosystem in Boston, both of funders and of business support organizations.
Alrighty, and then squeezing one last question in for you, Aliana, and answer as quickly as you need to, and then we will close out. But how important is the measurement of social impact of our fund? Are you finding that to be a priority for your unaccredited investors? This is from Morgan.
It's very important. It's important to our community at large. We produce our impact report for everybody to see. It is publicly available. And the link is in the chat. And we're really proud to showcase the stories, photos, videos, and impact assessment data that we gather each year. But that's a really big piece of how we communicate what we're doing, and we provide it publicly to our full community, not only to our investors. I think we should close there, but I'll try and follow up with people with some questions in the chat.
Yep, so that was our last question. Thank you all for joining us. This space has been amazing. Thank you to our panelists for activating this space so beautifully. Thank you all for RSVPing, joining us, sharing space with us. This has been awesome. We will try to answer as many questions that did not get answered in the email that we'll send. We will follow up with the recording. We'll share resources. We will share as much as we can. And again, this will not be the last that you see of us. So thank you all so much for joining us, and have a wonderful rest of your afternoon. Thank you all. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thanks, everybody. That was great. Let me stop recording.